In most games, locations and levels are based on real-world places. The Left 4 Dead series is no exception. Today we embarking from the virtual world of Left 4 Dead into the real one, to see what inspired the developers to create their favorite maps. From abandoned farms where life once thrived, to a concrete jungle hiding the unknown, we immerse ourselves in the atmosphere of horror and unveil the secrets that laid the foundation of this legendary game. So get ready for a big journey when the line between virtual and real blurs, and the atmosphere of the apocalypse may intertwine with reality. Hello there, Fry here, and let's get started. And we will start with the campaign of the second part of the game, because there is simply more information about them. And our list opens with the campaign The Center and the City of Savannah in state of Georgia. At the beginning of the campaign we are greeted by the Wanna Hotel, where the survivors are located on the roof. The hotel's name itself, it's a pun on city's name Savannah, so in the real city you won't find a hotel with that name, and we can only guess what inspired the developers in designing it. If you have any guesses, feel free to share them in the comments. In the second chapter, before the survivors reach the Liberty Mall, they will come across Whitaker's gun shop. A store with that name does exist in Owensboro, Kentucky. Well, we can say it existed. In March 2024, there was news that the store was closed to the public, and the store across the street where you pick up the cola is Save for Less. This is an in-game adaptation of the Food for Less grocery store chain.
I'm guessing you four would be headed to the mall for rescue, and I further guess you won't get there, as the road is blocked. So here's my proposition. If you go find me some colas at yonder store, I'll clear the Cedar blockade for you.
So our way's blocked, and the only way we get it unblocked is to get you some cola.
I am a man of my word, sir. Procure me my cola, and I'll clear the path to the mall for you. The guns are on the house.
Sure. Why not?
Here we are finally reaching the Liberty Mall. It is like based on the Bellevue Square in Bellevue, Washington, where the Wells headquarters are located. Its exterior closely resembles what can be seen in the game. Well, almost seen if you use no clip. Interestingly, are noted by a Reddit user living in Savannah, the developers may have also drawn inspiration from the now closed Savannah Mall and the Ogletop Mall. The large hall in Bellevue Square resembles the atrium chapter in the game. However, in the real mall there isn't a car display. Instead, there's a dedicated Tesla store. Bellevue Square opened back in August 1946. Today the mall houses over 200 device stores and attracts more than 23 million visitors annually. Its total area is around 1,300,000 square feet.
Disco pants and haircuts. Man, lots of space in this mall.
About time a store gives a man a haircut while he buys himself some pants.
From the city of Savannah, we slowly transition to the city of Rayford, or more accurately to the city that inspired the developers. According to the Left 4 Dead wiki, it's Atlanta. In some articles, the cities of Macon and Athens in Georgia state. These cities cover two campaigns, the Passing and the Sacrifice. As for the Passing campaign, the key location here is a historic underground tour, which the survivors must pass through to reach the other side of the bridge. The prototype for this location is the Bill Spidell Underground Tour in the Seattle, Washington. There you can see an underground city built in the mid-19th century, which later became obsolete when the streets were raised above the ground level. A town founded on mostly soggy tide floods, whose streets would, whenever the rains come, blood deep enough with mud to even consume docks. After the fire, which destroyed some 25 square blocks on mostly wooden buildings in the heart of Seattle, it was unanimously decided that all new construction must be of the stone and brick masonry. The city also decided to rise up from the muck in which its original streets lay. It was this decision that created the underground. The city built retaining walls 8 feet or higher on either side of the old streets, filled in the space between the walls and paved over the fill to effectively raise the streets, making them 1 story higher than the old sidewalks that still ran alongside them. The history of the underground tour began in 1954, when writer Bill Spidell discovered this underground city while trying to save Perno Square, which had fallen into such a state of neglect that few recognize it as a part of the city. Spidell wanted to restore the historic historical significance of the square. Despite disputes with the city hall and other challenges, he eventually found the remnants of the old city, which had burned down after Great Sale of Fire in 1889. And in 1965, the tour with official name Bill Spider Underground Tour was established, which continues to operate from the Pioneer Building and adjacent buildings. The tour route passes disused stormfronts, artifacts and multiple tunnel entrances. A second tour beneath the streets was created in 2013 and used other sections of the underground network. What's interesting is that in the game the second phase of the tour was never completed due to the apocalypse. Its opening was planned for 2010. It's also amusing that Rochelle mentions the Seattle Underground Tour, which only confirms that there was indeed a reference for the tour in the game. There's also interesting detail regarding the entrance fee for the tour. In the game there's several voice lines from Nick, who complains about the high price, given the condition of the tour itself.
Jesus, this place sucks. From one con man to another, $5 for this? I tip my hat to you, Rayford.
Phase 1 is over?
Phase 2 coming in 2010? Shit, Phase 1 ain't done.
Hey, sorry about the lack of history in Phase 1, Coach.
Phase 2 my ass.
I've never had so much fun learning. That was almost as bad as the Seattle Underground Tour.
Jesus Christ, what did we just pay $5 for?
And the most interesting part is that the price for the adult ticket in 2024 is $22. However, if you look at the ticket price in 2009, when the events of the game take place, it hasn't changed much, as it was $15 back then. So the game actually offers a pretty good discount. By the way, in the May 1965, on the very first day of the tour opening, more than 500 people visited, which the ticket price being just $1. Among the other locations in the campaign, I think everyone remembers these pedestrian bridges and the waterfront park in the first chapter. The most interesting part is that their prototypes are located in the city of Savannah, Georgia, when the events from the first campaign, the center, take place.
NANI?
And if we look at the waterfront park in the real Savannah, called River Street, we can see many similarities with the level in the game, from the similar buildings to these pedestrian bridges. Additionally, the port in the end of the campaign might have been inspired by the port in Atlanta, but there's no definitive information on that.
The survivors' next destination is Griffin County in the Dark Carnival campaign. In reality, this corresponds to the city of Griffin in Spalding County, Georgia. At the beginning of the campaign, you can see a sign indicating it's Interstate 16. In reality, this highway begins in Macon and ends in Savannah. However, it doesn't pass through the city of Griffin. Instead, Georgia State Route 16 does. Next, we come across the Whispering Oaks Motel, located along the same Interstate 16. It's a classic American motel on an interstate highway, and as motels of this type are all very similar, it's unlikely the developers based it on any specific motel. Moving on, we see a blocked and damaged bridge. There are bridges in Griffin, but it's hard to say which one served as a reference for the bridge in the game. The same goes for the valley that the survivors used to bypass the bridge, arriving at the amusement park. Now we've reached the main location in this campaign, the Whispering Oaks Amusement Park. For its creation, the developers drew inspiration from various real-life fairs and amusement parks. In an interview with Valve game designer Phil Coe, conducted by Left 4 Dead community member NF, it's revealed that the fairgrounds section of the campaign is based on the Evergreen State Fairgrounds. This annual fair is located in Monroe, Washington. According to the developer, the fair was just a few minutes' drive from Valve's office, so they went there when the fair was closed to take photos for reference. For the most part, they based various buildings and structures in the game on those from the Evergreen State Fair, but not the rides. When it comes to the rides, the developer mentioned that he drew inspiration from Kings Island in Mason, Ohio, where he grew up. However, this was more of a loose reference. Another developer who worked on the chapter featuring the roller coasters was inspired by the steel coaster Twisted Colossus, located at Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia, California. As for the Peach Pit Stadium and the stage in the campaign finale, the reference came from the Washington State Fair in Washington State. A few years later, as the developer mentioned, he visited the fair and photographed the stage. According to him, the whole area didn't resemble the game much, but since the game was created in 2009, it may have changed since then. He also took photos of some places where the surfaces might have been used as references for textures in the game. And here you can see that the yellow and red striped tent is identical in color to the texture of the large tents in the second chapter of the campaign.
Elephant ears, funnel cakes, corn dogs. Man, these signs are bringing back some memories.
Coach, you're making me hungry just listening to you.
Oh, baby, I could destroy some kettle corn right now.
Hey, can we stop and make some cotton candy? Seriously.
Hey, Ellis, you like taters?
You know, I know what you're saying. And guess what? I do like taters.
There's also cut content in the campaign related to a monorail. According to the developer, in its creation it resembled not so much a monorail, but rather the People Mover ride at Disneyland. Interestingly, there are many places in the US that share the same name as the amusement park in the game. One of the most notable is Whispering Oaks RV Park in Waymar, Texas. However, this is a trailer and camping park where people can stay overnight or just relax in designated areas. What's intriguing is the park's logo uses a font similar to the one in the Dark Carnival poster.
After being rescued from the amusement park and surviving the helicopter crash, the survivors found themselves in the swampy region of Louisiana, where the events of the Swamp Fever campaign take place. According to Valve art designer Eric Kirchmer, the campaign wasn't focused on any specific location. Instead, the developers were inspired by various bios. Louisiana has many such places, so the developers likely took a little from each and combined them in the game. If we consider the speculations of Reddit users, one might suggest that one of the bios used as inspiration for the campaign was that Atchafalaya Basin wetlands in Louisiana. And when you look at them, it's easy to believe that the developers were inspired by this area when creating the campaign. Here we have swamps with gators, abandoned shacks, everything that looks like ready-made sets for life adaptation of this campaign.
You know how long I've been waiting for this? Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
I don't think you guys walk away from this.
You just make sure people know what happened here today.
The total area of this basin is 1,400,000 acres. If we delve a bit into history, the Atchafalaya Basin was home to the Chichimacha tribe for many generations. They cultivate the highlands, hunted and fished in the swamps. When Europeans arrived here in the early 18th century, the slow-moving bayou was clogged with logs and snakes in the northern sections. Today, the Atchafalaya Basin produces around 22 million pounds of the commercial crawfish annually and is dotted with pumps extracting natural gas. It's also popular year-round with fishermen, hunters and tourists.
More shacks. Quaint cottage with water views.
Did people really live in these shacks? This is just really unsanitary. Where did anyone who lived here wash their hands?
You want us to cover you from zombie attacks while you wash your hands, Nick?
Go to hell.
Hey, everybody, let's get out of this mud.
In the final chapter of the campaign, the survivors encounter the plantation with a large house located near the Mississippi River. Unlike the previous location in this campaign, it's safe to say that the inspiration for this area was the 4-star Nottoway plantation and resort in White Castle, Iberville Parish, Louisiana. Just like in the game, the hotel is situated by the Mississippi River. The estate itself was built by craftsmen in 1859 for the southern planter John Hamden Randolph and is the largest surviving antebellum plantation house in the southern United States, with a total area of 53,000 square feet. In 1998, the house was added to the National Register of Historic Places, and it's a popular tourist attraction in southern Louisiana. With the Hard Rain campaign, it's all quite mysterious. Even finding an approximate location that could have served as a reference for the ducal town has proven difficult. However, if we talk about the sugar mill, the most similar one might be Sinclair Historic Sugar Mill District. I would have saved that if I haven't received official information from a community member NF, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. If we talk about Sinclair Historic Sugar Mill District, it is a historic industrial and residential complex on the former Marengo plantation in the unincorporated area of West Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The area is located on the west bank of the Mississippi River between the the cities of Brosley and Port Allen, directly across from the Baton Rouge. It was listed on the National Register of the Historic Places in 1998. In 2005, Harry L. Lowe and Company announced that the sugar mill would close, but the company would continue to ship sugar grown in West Baton Rouge to the Alma Plantation mill in Pond Cooper Parish. Looking at the map, the mill is relatively close to New Orleans, where the events of the next campaign, the Parish, take place. If we assume that the developers drew inspiration from this sugar mill, it makes sense that Virgil later transported the survivors to the New Orleans down the Mississippi River. Inside the mill, it's now abandoned, and many places and machinery resemble what can be seen in the second and third chapter of Hard Rain. Alright, now for some exclusive and official information about the real-life prototype of the sugar mill in the game. It is the Alcala sugar mill, and you never guess where it's located. Pause the video and write your guesses in the comments. Done? The Alcala mill is located in Hawaii. And it's definitely the most unexpected location among all the prototypes of the game campaigns. The Kalo sugar mill was the part of the first commercially successful sugar cane plantation in Hawaii, established in Kalo on the island of Kauai in 1835 by Latin Company. The company became the first sugar giant in Kauai. Soon, however, due to financial difficulties and several strikes by local workers in the Hawaii Islands, the company was forced to close. Afterward, the Kalo plantation and mill operated under various owners until it was shut down in 1996. In that same year, the Kaloa mill was added to the National Register of Historic Places. Today, visitors to the site can see the remains of the old sugar mill and a sculpture to the people who labored in the sugar industry in Kaloa. Another interesting fact is that the location of the mill was used in the 2019 movie Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs & Shaw. If we talk about the campaign in the game, it's even take place somewhere near the border of the Mississippi and Louisiana state. We reached the final campaign of the second part of the game, the Parish, and the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. The campaign begins with Waterfront Market, which may inspired by the Riverwalk Marketplace, also located on riverfront in New Orleans. Further along, we encounter a building with a jukebox inside. The real-life prototype for this location is likely LaBranchi House, also known as the Haunted House. This historic building is said to be haunted by at least two different ghosts. Stories say a wealthy sugar planter, Mr. LaBranchi, had a secret mistress named Melissa, and his wife found it out after he died. It was said that Mrs. LaBranchi invited Melissa over for tea, dragged her and chained her up on the third floor, starving her to death. It was said Mrs. LaBranchi lived for another 15 years, with the woman corpse above her all these years. Both women ghosts are said to linger here, Melissa making restless movements on the second and third floors, and Mrs. LaBranchi has been seen on the second wearing a blue gown. At the very end of the chapter, the survivors used the Ref Leclerc's voodoo shop as a safe room. In the real city, it is known by a slightly different name, Ref Zombie's Voodoo Shop. The shop sells various items that can help individuals learn about and practice voodoo religions and spiritual ceremonies. Interestingly, the real store is located across the street from the LaBranchi house. The second chapter begins with Bienville Park. The park entrance is greeted by a broad staircase and the park sign. To the left there is a small gazebo and the right a camping area. In the center of the park, players will recognize the statue of the horse. The developers drew inspiration from various locations for the creation of this park. Let's go through them in order. The initial staircase and entrance to the park were inspired by the Washington Artillery Park in New Orleans. This park frequently hosts street musicians and other performers showcasing their talents, whether in music or other forms of art. Additionally, it worth noting that in 2022 the canon Museum from the park was moved to the Jackson Barracks. If we talk about the gazebo in the park, it was inspired by a similar gazebo in Bienville Square, which shares its name with the park in the game, but is located in Mobile, Alabama. As for the most prominent feature in the park, the horse statue in the center, we need to return to the Washington Artillery Park and simply turn 180 degrees. Yep, you understood that correctly. The developers made an interesting move by combining two real locations in the New Orleans that face each other. So if you visit the center of the park known as Jackson Square, you'll find the same statue of a horse and rider. This statue, erected in 1856, was sculpted by Clark Mills, and the rider on the horse is General Andrew Jackson, who was also the 7th President of the United States. In honor of Andrew Jackson, the square was renamed in the first half of 19th century, after the borough of New Orleans was won under his command in 1815. An interesting fact is that in a beta version of the game, the park was named Jackson.
Man, I wish we had a horse. I love horses.
You ever eat horse? It's tasty.
Horses are for riding, not eating, Nick.
Additionally, behind this statue you can see the St. Louis Cathedral, dedicated to Louis IX, King of France. It was built in the late 18th centuries, and the center tower, bell tower with the clock, was completed in 1819. The cathedral serves as the seat of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New Orleans, and is one of oldest continuously operating cathedrals in the US. I think many of you will understand now why the campaign in the game is called the Parish. So, we're done with the park. Moving in the third chapter, we visit the St. Roch Cemetery, or its real-life counterpart, St. Roch Cemetery. If you compare the names and the entrance, you can see how the developers creatively adapted it for the game. As for the cemetery itself, like in the game, graves here are above ground. This is because New Orleans is below sea level, and if graves were dug normally, they could be washed away. This issue did occur between 1724 and 1789, when burials were done on the ground. By the way, Alice mentioned this fact in the game.
You know why they bury him above ground?
Yes, I do know why they bury them above ground.
They bury him like that because they're under sea level.
Yes, Ellis, it is. Okay, it is.
Regarding the location of St. Roch Cemetery, it's situated in a bywater neighborhood, and unlike in the game, there's no highway nearby. The cemetery features is the St. Roch Chapel, which is filled with prosthetics, crutches and other items left by those who visited the chapel to ask St. Roch for healing. Besides being an important religion site, the St. Roch Chapel is also a popular tourist attraction, showcasing the unique aspects of New Orleans' exotic Catholicism. Moving on the fourth chapter, it was recalling the French Quarter of New Orleans, where various events and festivals are frequently held. One such festival is Mardi Gras, celebrated before Ash Wednesday and the beginning of the Catholic Lent. Each year the carnival is led by King and Queen, who ride on a huge decorated float with their entourage in masks and costumes. Notably, one of the features of the festival is the large number of women participating topless. And now this explains what Rochelle is referring at the beginning of the campaign when she mentions this event.
Good luck to you!
You too, Virgil.
We're here, Crescent City. I'll tell you now, I'm not showing anyone my tits.
I'm sorry, Rochelle. What the hell are you talking about?
The primary objective for the survivors throughout the campaign is the Veterans Memorial Bridge. In Louisiana, there's the bridge with the same name that connects two towns of Gramercy and Wallace, also known as the Gramercy Bridge. The bridge opened in 1995, making it the second newest bridge over the Mississippi River, after the John James Audubon Bridge, which opened in 2011. The total length of the bridge is 3,101 feet. Another potential source of inspiration for the bridge in the game could be the Crescent City connection, located in New Orleans. This consists of the pair of cantilever bridges on the 90 Business Highway over the Mississippi River. Here's an interesting fact about why New Orleans is also called Crescent City. Long before the French Quarter was known as what it was known by the name of Vieux Carré, Old Square. Upon close inspection of a map, it's clear that the city, the heart of the city, was actually built in a sharp curve around the Mississippi River. Therefore, the city was called the Crescent City, due to this river bend resembling a crescent moon. Yeah, the Coldstream campaign is not canonical, but saying it is officially included in the game, I think it's worth mentioning briefly. The geographical location of this campaign can be determined from the map in the save room in the final chapter. It shows Union Country and marks cities like Roselle and Elizabeth, as well as the NG Transit rail line. Therefore, it's proven that the campaign takes place in New Jersey. So now you see why it's not canonical? Just look at the map and see where the Louisiana is compared to New Jersey. Also, this campaign, like The Last Stand, which we'll get to later, was created by the community.
Now we've reached the campaigns of the first game, where the story begins with the No Mercy campaign, which takes place in the city of Fairfield, Pennsylvania. Interviews with the developers and a store sign in the game indicate that Fairfield is in the 215 area code, which corresponds to Philadelphia. However, the city in the game doesn't have any recognizable architecture or landmarks. The subway system also bears no resemblance. Additionally, the city is surrounded by mountains, which doesn't match the real-world prototype. It's worth noting that there is a city named Fairfield in Pennsylvania, located outside of Gettysburg. However, it falls within the 717 area code, while in Left 4 Dead, it's the 215 area code, the Philadelphia area, which is about 100 miles away from the real Fairfield. So, the main theory and assumption suggests that the real-life inspiration for Fairfield in the game is the city of Philadelphia. Unlike the game, the actual Fairfield is a small historic district with a population of 526 people as of 2020. And since there are no buildings or landmarks in the campaign that can be directly linked to real places, I suggest we take a closer look at a few local companies before moving on to Mercy Hospital itself. First, let's focus on the Eastern Waterworks Company, which can be seen in the third chapter. Judging by its name, it operates only in the eastern part of the United States. Nearby is the Hirsch Shipping Company. It is a large shipping and logistics corporation with major investments in rail freight transport, owning a fleet of cars and trains. The company was founded in 1948 and has since been supplying freight and commercial products. Due to its success in timely deliveries, it has been able to expand throughout the northeastern part of the United States, although it is unclear whether it has expanded across the entire country. I remind you that this is all the backstory of an in-game company. It also has several joint ventures with Richardson Atlantic, a company seen throughout the Blood Harvest campaign. If we talk about the real-life prototype of this company, it is most likely United Parcel Service, aka UPS. UPS specializes in express delivery and logistics, and its headquarters is located in Atlanta, Georgia. The company also operates its own airline, United Airlines, with a fleet of 237 jet aircraft. UPS employs around 500,000 people worldwide. One of its largest clients is Amazon, which paid $11.3 billion for delivery services in 2020 alone, accounting for 13.3% of the company's revenue. Now, let's move on to Mercy Hospital itself. Its prototype is most likely UPMC Mercy, the primary hospital facility of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, located in the uptown neighborhood of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is situated near Duquesne University and just a few blocks from PPG Paints Arena and downtown Pittsburgh. UPMC Mercy is the first chartered hospital established in the city of Pittsburgh and also the first hospital in the world founded by a religious institute, the Sisters of Mercy. It is also the first teaching hospital in the region to accept residents for teaching positions, starting in 1848, a year after it opened its doors. In January 2008, Mercy Hospital merged with Pittsburgh's healthcare giant UPMC, taking its current name, UPMC Mercy. Interestingly, the first part of the game was released in 2008 and uses the hospital's old name before the merger, likely because it was finalized in the game before the merger took place. Alternatively, this might have been done to avoid direct references to the real location. UPMC Mercy remains Pittsburgh's only Catholic hospital, providing a full range of specialized services. Just like in the game, the hospital has its own helipad. However, unlike in the game, it actually has two helipads, one on the roof and another on a parking structure. And yes, there is also a 64-story U.S. Steel tower in Pittsburgh that is an office building. And in 2008, at its top, they added a sign UPMC, which was very criticized by those who participated in the construction of this building in 1970. Interesting fact, the address of the hospital in the game is 444 South 42, and if you Google this address, one of the first queries you will see is 444 South Flower. This is a 48-story skyscraper in the Bunker Hill area of downtown Los Angeles, and the design, although remote, but slightly reminiscent of the hospital in the game. Incidentally, next to it is the US Bank Tower, the same one that was the prototype for Los Santos Tower in GTA San Andreas and for Maze Bank Tower in GTA 5.
The events of the Crash Course campaign begin after Zoe kills the infected pilot, causing the helicopter to crash. As a result, the survivors found themselves in Whitney Country. Since this campaign was added later to fill the gap between No Mercy and Death Toll, determining the exact location is quite difficult. However, if we look at the map and estimate the route from Philadelphia to Riverside, the events of Crash Course occur somewhere in this area. Apart from Lewis's quips at Francis and the familiar companions like Hirsch and Eastern Waterworks, there aren't much else to say about the location. According to Francis, he worked at her shipping company, but he was fired due to a center incident. The events of the next campaign, Death Toll, start near the town of Riverside in Pennsylvania. In real life, this town actually exists in this state, but let's go step by step. At the beginning of the campaign, the survivors encounter a destroyed bridge and a tunnel. Regarding the tunnel, it can be said with some confidence that its reference was the abandoned section of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. This stretching 30 miles long opened in 1940 and passed through 7 tunnels, which could serve as a prototype for the tunnel in the game. Now some of them are abandoned as well as a section of this highway. And if you look at these tunnels, the western entrance too is like what we can see in the game. And this is eastern entrance, which you can't see in the game because of the road that's blocked off in the tunnel. An interesting fact is that one of these abandoned tunnels, namely Race Hill, appeared in 2005 music video Foxtrot Uniform Charlie Killer by American rock band Bloodhound Gang. The location of the next 2 chapters is almost impossible to determine. However, given that the Riverside in the game based on the real Riverside in Pennsylvania, the church in the 3rd chapter might be loosely inspired by the United Methodist Church of St. Peter in Riverside. But this connection is quite tenuous. Moving on the 4th chapter, we enter the city of Riverside. In reality, the city isn't as large as depicted in the game and mostly consists of private houses rather than high-rises. Therefore, like with Fairfield, the developers took a small-time name and presented it as a larger city. However, unlike Fairfield, it's hard to pinpoint a specific real city that served as a prototype for Riverside. In the final chapter, before reaching to the boat station, we pass through Riverside Park. There are many parks with that name across the US. In fact, the city of Riverside is somewhat analogous to Springfield in Simpsons, as there are many Riverside across various states in the US. Focusing on Riverside parks, there are several notable ones in Pennsylvania, specifically in the cities of Greenville, Easton, and Tunkhannock. The events of the next campaign, The Dare, take place in the city of Newburgh, Pennsylvania. But even here, it's not as straightforward. As you may have noticed in the first game, the developers like to take names of small towns and give them the attributes of larger ones. In Pennsylvania, there are actually 5 cities named Newburgh in different countries, the largest of this in Cumberland country. However, none of this correspond to the city described in the game. It's likely that the in-game Newburgh was inspired by Pittsburgh. It is located by a river, and at the end of the Death Toll campaign, we can see Newburgh across the river. However, connections between the campaigns in the first game are quite tenuous, as are their real-life prototypes. Returning to Pittsburgh, in reality it is located near the Allegheny National Forest, where the events of the next campaign, Blood Harvest, begin. Pittsburgh does have an airport, but even here it's not so straightforward. The in-game version of the airport bears more architectural resemblance to the Harrisburg International Airport in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Between the campaigns Dead Air and Blood Harvest, there was unfinished and unreleased campaign called Damn It, which serves as the bridge and fills the gap between these campaigns. The events of this campaign take place near the Allegheny National Forest, where the Blood Harvest campaign begins. The main location of the campaign is the Kinzua Dam on the Allegheny River in Warren County, Pennsylvania. It is one of the largest dams in US east of the Mississippi River. In addition to flood control and power generation, the dam created Pennsylvania's second deepest lake, the Allegheny Reservoir, also known as Kinzua Lake, and the Perfidy Lake among the Seneca. Quaker Lake, a small artificial lake that flows in the reservoir, was also formed as a result of the dam construction. Construction of the dam began in 1960 with a total cost of approximately $120 million. The dam was completed and opened in 1965. Its primary purpose was the combat flooding on the Allegheny River. According to the US Army Corps and engineers, the Kinzua Dam paid for itself in 1972, when Tropical Storm Agnes brought continuous heavy rains to the watershed, causing the reservoir to fill to within nearly a meter of its maximum capacity. The dam helped avoid flood damage estimated at $247 million. Since its completion, the Kinzua Dam has prevented flood damage amounting to approximately $1 billion. The dam stands 179 feet tall, with a length of 1,897 and the width of 1,245 feet. Its total capacity is 1,300,000 acre-feet. Additionally, in October 2017, a documentary film was released about the construction of the Kinzua Dam and the creation of the Allegheny Reservoir. Here we are at the penultimate location for the survivors of the first game. As I have mentioned before, the events of the Blood Harvest campaign, they begin in the Allegheny National Forest. It is located in the northwest of Pennsylvania, approximately 100 miles northeast of Pittsburgh, and covers several counties in the state. The administrative headquarters of the forest is in Warren, which has 2 ranger stations. Today, the Allegheny Plateau is known for a black cherry, maple, and other hardwood trees. However, 200 years ago, these species were less common. The current forests are mainly the result of 2 factors: timber harvesting at the turn of the 20th centuries and forest management by the Forest Service since 1923. Looking back into history, in the 18th century, the forests in the northwest of Pennsylvania were primarily composed of eastern hemlock and American beech. Other common species include sugar maple, birch, chestnut, white pine, white oak, and red maple. Natural disasters like tornadoes and ice storms were common events that created a patchwork of small opening in the forest canopy across a landscape before people arrived on the North American continent. Later, Native Americans burned small patches of the forest to improve the production of berries and oak mast, as well as for hunting and facilitating travel. When European settlers reached the area in the early 19th century, they began to cut down trees primarily to clear land for agriculture and to use the wood for building cabins and barns. Soon the first industrial watermills started cutting a small amount of timber from pine, hemlock, and large hardwood trees. In addition to deforestation, hunting of local wildlife was also prevalent. By 1900, deer were nearly wiped out due to overhunting. The Pennsylvania Game Commission, which is responsible for wildlife conservation in the state, began to restore deer herds by importing them from other states. By 1911, the US Congress passed the Weeks Act, which allowed the federal governments to purchase land in eastern states to create national forests. Due to the low deer population, a new forest quickly began to grow. The old forest of hemlock and beech once stretched along northern Pennsylvania, but intensive logging between 1890 and 1930 left only remnants on this early forest in places like Hearst Content. Since the Forest Service began managing the Allegheny National Forest in 1923, a new forest of hardwood trees such as black cherry has been created with the help of herbicides and selective fertilization. Today the trees are mature and capable of providing high-quality timber for furniture and other needs. A small percentage of the forest in certain sections was left in a natural state untouched by logging to gradually progress towards an old-growth biological condition. The total area of the Allegheny National Forest is 530,175 acres. This extensive region of Pennsylvania remains of the least densely populated areas east of Mississippi River. At the end of the first chapter, near the safe house, we can see a building labeled Richardson Atlantic Freight Company. This is a freight railroad company. As we mentioned earlier, it operates alongside another in-game company, Hearst Shipping Company. It is indeed quite difficult to even speculate on what might have inspired this prototype. Again, if you have any guesses, feel free to share them in the comments. and until the final chapter there's not much more to say about other locations, so I suggest we move directly to it. In the final chapter we arrive at a farm with a field of corn in one side and mountains on the other side. In the game you can find address of this farm, however it has not real world counterpart if you try to look it up. If you google this address you'll find a private house in Greenwood, South Carolina. It isn't it somewhat isolated from other houses, but unlike in the game this house is single story and brother. According to Trillia.com, the last sale of this house was on April 30, 2024, and its current price is $532,500. And yes, if you try to find this address in the Google, you can find more similar houses to one in the game, but it is this address that has the most match in the name. And if we talk about the design of the house itself, it is obvious that the source of inspiration for it was the house from the movie Science 2002 with Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix in the main roles. In the game, the house is almost an exact copy of the house from the movie, where it's also located in the middle of cornfield. And besides the exterior, inside the house is also almost completely copied from the interior of the house from the film. And by the way, the events of the film also take place in the state of Pennsylvania. After the military took the survivors on APC in the end of the Blood Harvest campaign, they took them to the Millhaven base, where the events of the comic The Sacrifice take place, which is identical name with the next campaign. And the unusual name of the military base is probably a reference to the famous rock band Nick Cave and Bad Seeds song Curse of Millhaven. In addition, the name Millhaven is likely based on Millhaven Institution, a maximum security prison located not even in US, but it's Bath, Ontario, Canada. The prison itself is on the north shore of the Lake Ontario on the Canadian side. The Millhaven Institution is very similar in real life to the image of Millhaven in the comic. The most notable is the real Millhaven Watchtower, which is very similar to the one in the comic, where Jeff and Annie at the end of the series were facing off against the Horde. Also, the Allegheny National Forest, when the events of the Blood Harvest take place, is located far from the Lake Ontario, about 335 miles to the northeast. If the starting point is the Kinsella Dam, where the events of the unreleased Damned campaign take place, because it's also located in the Allegheny National Forest and it's about 353 miles to the northwest, the trip to any direction will take approximately 6 hours, which explains why the survivors were resting or sleeping in the NPC during transport. Here we are, reaching the final point for the crew of Left 4 Dead 1. As I have already noted, the events of the Sacrifice campaign take place in roughly the same city as the events of the Passing campaign. The only exception is that the both survivors group reach the campaign port from opposite sides. If the survivors of Left 4 Dead 2 reached the port by the underground tour, the original crew made their way to the port part of this campaign. And here on Left 4 Dead Wiki, you can see that the prototype for the last chapter of the campaign could be the city of Athens in Georgia, but it's usual. There is a but. The city of Athens has no port. You can say this is the city of Macon, which is also mentioned in the articles. But it does not have a port either. In this case, there's only the port of Atlanta, which is prototype of Rayford in the game. But in general, in the game universe, Atlanta exists as a separate city. This can be found out in the first chapter of the Dark Carnival campaign. Therefore, the most likely option is a port is the already similar city of Savannah, where just near the river street there's the bridge, next to which is a port. Although the bridge itself connects two states, Georgia and South Carolina. In the Sacrifice comic, survivors after Bill's death and helping the Left 4 Dead 2 crew went to the Florida Keys. The Florida Keys is a Coral Cay archipelago located on the southern coast of Florida and the southernmost part of the continental US. Islands lie along the Straits of Florida, dividing the Atlantic Ocean east and the Gulf of Mexico in the northwest, and divide one edge of the Gulf of Florida. And the nearest point, the southern part of Key West, is located 93 miles from Cuba. According to the 2014 US Census, the archipelago had 77,136 inhabitants, and its total land area is 137.3 square miles. The climate in the islands is a tropical savanna. For this climate there is a strong seasonality, dry winter and rainy summer. And if we talk about flora and fauna on the islands, Florida Keys has a characteristic plant and animal species that are nowhere else in the United States. Among the unique animals, it is worth highlighting the key deer, protection by the National Reindeer Shelter. The surrounding Keys waters are part of conservation area known as Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. The main industries in the archipelago are fishing and tourism, including ecotourism. And of course there are also a few words to say about the locations in the Last Stand campaign. The events in this campaign are not canonical because it's alternative variation of the end of the Death Toll campaign. Although if we compare these locations in two campaigns, we can see a little difference. It begins in Riverside Park and showed what would happen if survivors would not go farther to a boathouse but turn off this road. The campaign's further action takes place somewhere in the vicinity of the riverside, and also ends with the rescue of the survivors by boat, on which they reach Newburgh and the Dead Air campaign.
You should have brought more tanks with you.
Well, it was probably the biggest video I ever made, and the information about it was sometimes very difficult to find, so I hope you enjoyed it. And if you are, then put thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification to not miss the next videos. And of course, share your guesses about the location from the game in the comments. VladFRY was here, peace to all, and see you.
We made it! I can't believe we made it!
Son, we just crossed the street. Let's not throw a party till we're out of the city.